We are so grateful for Loretta being here, and I invite you to come as close as you want, and if you have to keep going, you keep going. But Loretta Aikens.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Loretta Aikens, and I'm from Marion, Ohio. And I am so happy to see everybody from Ohio State here. Being here today is an honor. I graduated from college in 1969, and it was a different world then. It seemed like the entire world was in chaos. It was the time of protests for women's rights and civil rights, and against the draft and against the Vietnam War. There was a lot of hostility to our military. There was a draft in place at that time, and these young men stood up, these veterans, they did their duty to their country. And there was so much hostility with the protest march, veterans coming back from the war, they were spit on, they were kicked, they weren't served in restaurants and places like that. And I was a young nurse right out of college, and I thought, I don't think I really want to join the military, but I want to do something for my country. So the next thing I knew, I was working the night shift in a VA hospital. And in all of my life, that's the best thing I ever did. I was young, I was in my early 20s, I was kind of cute, and 1969 was a lot different than it is today. The soldiers, the vets, they were in 8-bed wards. There were 2 wheelchairs for an 8-bed ward. There may or may not be a television that worked. There were no lounges that these young veterans could go to. They were pretty much in a space about like that, the size of their bed. And as I made rounds at night, I would hear stories. They would tell me, I'm so lonely, I'm lonely. If I just had my dog, I would be happy. Well, I could identify with that because I'm telling you, nurses in those days made no money. I made $2.02 an hour, my first job as a registered nurse. But things were different. Food was very, very cheap. And let me tell you, I was a girl from the rural part of America, and I could cook. And all these young veterans on my ward, I would make birthday cakes, fudge, cookies, whatever. We would celebrate in our own way. And I would go through there at night, believe it or not, 40 patients. It was myself and a nursing assistant. And all these young veterans helped themselves. They would help each other get out of bed. They would be there when somebody was sad in the middle of the night. And I would hear over and over again about how they needed a dog. Well, I had this big old St. Bernard. I weighed 118 pounds. My dog weighed 120. She slept with me. I felt protected. She was close to me. She watched out for me. I would take pictures of the dog, and I would take it to work. Sometimes I would tell my veterans, hey, I'm going to drive up here and you can see my dog. Anyway, it just gave us something to talk about. Everybody loves a good dog story. Several years later, I was on my way to work one night, and something tragic happened to me. I was involved in an auto accident. I was hit by a drunk driver. I woke up in a hospital weeks later. I heard that I was talking and I had been interacting with people, but I remember a month later, I woke up on a Friday night. I was in traction. I was in a hospital bed. What on earth happened to me? And all I could think about was I wanted my dog. You know, if my dog were there, I would feel safe. I was afraid of everybody. Well, finally, after about 8 weeks, I was discharged, and I did not go back to work for a year and a half. For that entire time, my dog was with me. She protected me. I could talk to her, and she helped me get over the trauma of this terrible accident. Well, when I went back to work, I walked into the Veterans Hospital, and there was this big box, and it said, "Suggestions for a better workplace." Well, I knew right then and there I was going to fill this out, and I was going to go tell these people what I wanted to do to make it a better workplace. I wanted dogs to come visit. And so I prepared myself. I did all the literature, and I walked into that room. We were sitting in a circle, and everybody was so polite. And I told everybody about dogs. Do you know they were the first domesticated animal? Probably there was a dog, probably maybe was sick or something and hung around the cave, and the children in the cave clan would throw a bone. Maybe that dog had puppies, and you know children and puppies. That way the dog was domesticated. The dog would protect the people of the cave, would help them hunt, and sleeping with the dog at night kept them warm. I also told them about after the First World War, and the German soldiers were called shell-shocked. And the German government decided that if they could provide dogs to these soldiers, it would help them cope with what they had gone through during the war. I told them about the mother of nursing, who was Florence Nightingale. Florence Nightingale was a very strict nurse, but she thought that if soldiers that had been in combat could have little dogs, it would help them cope with the stress and help with healing. And I also told them about Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychiatry. And you know what? When he was in his office with patients, he had his dog with him, because he said, sometimes if you don't feel like talking to me, talk to my dog. And the dog was always present. And I told them about when I was in the hospital, and all the time I just wanted my dog. And my suggestion was, let's bring these dogs here. And I will never forget, I looked around the room and everybody's head was down, and then I saw this nurse stand up. She was 6 feet tall, and she stood up and she said, Loretta Aikens, you are a disgrace to nursing. You consider yourself a registered nurse, and you want to bring a dog to a hospital? Yes, ma'am. She said, stop right now. As God is my witness, HELL will freeze over before there will ever be a dog in a hospital. And she said, and you can go now. Well, I was the joke of the entire hospital. I came back from this trauma. You know, I was so excited about we were going to do something for our veterans. And man, I had been shot down. But as I walked down the hallway going back to my job, there was a song on it. It was called Turn, Turn, Turn. To every season, there is a purpose. And I decided right then and there, I was going to go back to school, and I was going to run my own intensive care unit, and we were going to have dogs. So sure enough, I went back to school. I got another degree. I got a master's degree, and I also got a degree in hospital administration. And as when I came out of graduate school, I was offered a job running the intensive care unit, the open heart intensive care unit, at the National Naval Hospital. And I'm thinking, this is wonderful. War was nothing. It's something that I didn't even think about. Well, as soon as I got there, we started preparing for Desert Storm War. And it was just a terrible time of turmoil. We had a patient, and an elderly lady who was dying. And she said to me one day, honey, I could die in peace if I could just see my dog one more time. Well, you know, I said to the doctor, do you think we can get a dog in here? And he said, if she wants it, we're getting a dog in here. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I think HELL just froze over. But that woman, she stayed alive long enough to see her dog, and that dog pranced down that intensive care unit and went in there, and I'm telling you, there was not a dry eye anywhere. And that was the first step toward dogs coming into hospitals. The Desert Storm War was over, and I knew on September, in September 2001, I knew we were going to go to war again. We started gearing up, and I'll tell you, when the wounded started coming in from the Iraq War, I had ran at that time an intensive care unit through the Vietnam War, through the Desert Storm War, and now we were doing this again. And I remember when they came in, we named our intensive care unit the Lady of Perpetual Sorrow. There was just sorrow when we saw these young veterans come again. These children, or these young vets, young military, they would be the same age as my grandchildren. And I started thinking about, we need to do something to just decrease the anxiety. By then, my St. Bernard had passed on to her heavenly rewards, and I was older and had a little bit more sense. So I had a 9-pound Shih Tzu. And I would go home at night, and my little dog was so happy to see me, and I would pick her up and hug her. And I'm telling you, even though I was a seasoned nurse, I would cry on my way home to work. I would pick up my dog, and one night I was standing at the kitchen stirring soup, and I was thinking, I'm hugging my dog. The time has come for change. Well, in 2007, Captain Batante, there at the Naval Hospital, said that we were getting a hospital dog. Her name was Laura Lee, and she had originally been trained to work with the blind. But when we found out we were getting that hospital dog, everybody was elated because we knew what a dog would mean to the staff, to the patients. And I remember the first time I saw her. She was a golden retriever, and she walked into that intensive care unit, and all the hands just reached out to touch her. We started this program called Call a Dog program. The dogs, they were working members of the military. She was Navy, obviously. And there were business cards and telephone numbers. Yes, please pass these around. Here's more of them. As time went on, we all recognized the benefit of having a hospital dog. One day I heard we were getting a Marine. And I saw him for the first time. He was tall, dark, handsome. He had bedroom eyes. He looked beautiful in his uniform. And he was, I'm going to pass this one around too. This was Corporal Archie. Now, he was not a warm, fuzzy dog like Laura Lee. He was a soldier. German Shepherd. He was to work with the wounded warriors who had been in Iraq, and they were used to working with the dogs. So now we had 2 hospital dogs that were visiting every day. The next thing we knew, we had another dog, and her name was Bobby. And Bobby was a nurse, and Bobby was gorgeous. She would walk down the hallway, and she would look around, and she would shake her glorious blonde hair. And I saw her flirting with Archie, and I knew right then and there we had a hospital romance going. Bobby was called a Goldador. She was a cross between a golden retriever and a Labrador. And now we had 3 working dogs, and you would see the dogs all over the hospital. One day we were going to give absolutely terrible news to somebody. And I walked out of my office and I looked, and there was Bobby. And Bobby was just there prancing, shaking her head, smiling. And I said to her handler, do you have time? Because we're going to tell a 24-year-old with a beautiful child and a beautiful wife that he's just got a few months to live. And I was nearly in tears myself, and I bent down and I grabbed the dog, and the handler said yes. And so when the doctor came out after telling the sad news to the patient, I said to them, would you mind if I bring the dog in? And I will never forget this. He got off of that stretcher, the table that he was on. He bent down, he hugged the dog. His wife bent down, hugged that dog, and I was down there with them. If there was ever a time that it calmed us down and gave some solace, it was just to see them there with that dog. And then as time went on, we had more dogs coming into the hospital. We had Red Cross dogs. We got more hospital dogs. And I'm going to pass these around. These are some of the Red Cross dogs that come visit. They have business cards. Everybody knows their name. They know when they're coming in. And I remember one time we had a young colonel coming back from Afghanistan, and he said, "I'm so afraid. I don't know what to do." He said, "I don't want my wife or my children to see me afraid." I said, "Colonel, I have a solution. When you leave the intensive care unit, I'm going to have a dog for you." And he called me from his cell phone and he said, Loretta, don't forget, I need the dog. And when he came from the intensive care unit, not one, but two dogs, two beautiful blondes, were there waiting for him. And he reached over and touched the dog, and he patted the bed, and the dog hopped up there. There were other stories. One time we had an 80-year-old woman, and she had had a very difficult surgery. She said that she didn't remember what happened to her, but she was in the hospital for weeks, and the Red Cross dogs were making rounds that day, and I said to the handlers, "Come on with me. This patient is going to rehab today, and let's go wish her well." And we all went up there, and she's on an ambulance stretcher. She's ready to go to rehab, and she said to me, "Honey, I don't remember anything about my hospitalization." And I said, "Ma'am, I'm here with the dogs, and we are going to wish you well." And those Red Cross dogs put their paws up, and they saluted her as she went out the door. There was not a dry eye anywhere on that ward. When she came back to clinic, I gave her the picture, and that was the highlight. She's going to put that on her Christmas card with the dog saluting her as she went out. Another day I was making rounds on the ward, and we had a 88-year-old lady who had been particularly depressed after her surgery. And I walked in there and I saw her, and she was not gloom and doom in the bed. She was just smiling and happy, and I saw her husband over in the corner, and he's smiling and happy. And I said, "It looks like you're having a good day. Can I look at your dressing?" And she said, "Yes." And I knew something was up. And I pulled the covers back, and I saw these little eyes. And her miniature poodle was sleeping in there under the cover. And it was just the biggest change in her, because she was smiling and laughing, and she was telling me how much it meant to her to have her dog there. And I'm going to tell you, every day when the dog makes rounds, they walk right past my office. I carry Doggie Biscuits in my pocket, and you know, we're a military hospital where people wear uniforms. I also carry lint rollers. These dogs, they know when to go up and talk to people. And remember, all of our dogs have ranks. Our top dog, Laura Lee, she was promoted to Vice Admiral. That ceremony was done by Admiral Nathan, who was the Surgeon General at that time. When my beautiful, handsome Marine Archie was promoted, he is now Gunnery Sergeant Archie, General Amos came and did the ceremony. And these are huge events when these dogs make rank. We have parties, and you know, it just makes everything much more human for everybody. And everybody knows that old saying about when you're in Washington, if you need a friend, get a dog because nobody else is there for you. Let me tell you, their truer words were never spoken, because just going to work, when I walk in there and I see the dogs and I see all the love and support and the happiness these dogs bring, it makes me happy. And I'm going to tell you, Walter Reed is a wonderful place to work. When I tell you the best thing I ever did in my life was work for the Veterans Administration, the second best thing I ever did in my life was work for the military at Walter Reed. I've been there 27 years now, and I will probably retire from there. And I think back to a time when dogs were not allowed in hospitals. You know, people, visiting hours were 5 minutes every hour, whatever. We have open visiting. These dogs come. You will see the dog caravans all over the place. And I'll tell you, it is just a wonderful opportunity for me to have worked so long, and our dogs are our veterans. And anyway, if any of you ever have the opportunity to come to Walter Reed, just remember me, Loretta Aikens. I work in the cardiac surgery clinic, and I will be happy to show you around and let you see some of the dogs. Okay.
They're so darn cute. I love
Did you pass everything out?
All right, I have a few more left, so we
Okay.
can always keep them for. And here's
Okay.
your tall dark Marie.
Okay, well,
I don't
this,
want you to.
okay.
Here's your tall dark Marie. I love Loretta. That's not the first time she's been here, but it's the first time she's talked about the dogs at Walter Reed. And for those of you who know Walter Reed and Bethesda Naval, they have merged, and it is an amazing place where there is really change agent kind of medicine being done, particularly related to prosthetics and amputees. Thank you so much, Loretta, for being here and for the healing way you have in teaching, but also providing clinical care.